Welcome to the New Age Startup Podcast, your deep dive into the dynamic world of young entrepreneurs, cutting edge technology, and savvy finance. I'm your host, Sam Moegenburg, and every 2 weeks we'll explore the inspiring stories, innovative strategies, and bold visions that are shaping the future of business and lifestyle. Whether you're a budding entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just someone who loves a good success story, this is the podcast for you. In this episode, I'm going to talk about my journey from dropping out of college to becoming a young entrepreneur in LA. Let's get into it. So, for episode 1, I wanted to kind of introduce myself. My name is Sam, and kind of tell you about, where I grew up, some of my interests, and that sort of stuff. So, to start, I actually grew up in Wisconsin, right outside of Milwaukee, and Wisconsin is an interesting place because compared to LA or another bigger city, there's not as much to offer. I don't think in terms of innovative technology and business. It's pretty black and white in Wisconsin, and so I always kind of knew like I wanted to get out of Wisconsin and see the world, explore other things, and I've always been kind of a people person. So I really enjoy networking with other young entrepreneurs, old entrepreneurs, with more experience, and really have those conversations that allow you to learn things and kind of progress, and figure out what you want to do. So that's kind of what I did. Before that, I think a lot of pressure from my family to go to college, like many of you do. And so, luckily, I have a very supportive family. And so, instead of going to school for business or finance, which I was never really, strong in those fields, I actually went to Savannah College of Art and Design in Georgia. And I just kind of realized, like, 2 years in, like, I was taking these film classes, with really experienced professionals, and I just realized like I didn't need to be doing this. Like, if I wanted to go film something, I could pick up my camera and just go film. Um, I think not everyone can do that, but I've been playing around with cameras, and this has been who I am for forever. Since I was very young. So I think also like part of being an entrepreneur is like you're kind of born with some of these traits. So I've always been a go-getter. If I want to do something, I'll figure out a way to do it. And so that's kind of what I did. So 2 years into film school, I dropped out and I decided to move to LA. I didn't really know many people in LA, so it was a big move for sure. I was kind of early on the social media train, before it became super mainstream, in terms of I was actually making online friends and talking and meeting with them in real life. And so when I was in college, I had some friends that I'd been talking to over Instagram for like several years, and they were successful kind of startup entrepreneurs, and they lived in LA in this crazy house up in Hollywood Hills. And they just kind of convinced me one day, like, if you want to do this and make this change and work for yourself instead of someone else for the rest of your life, come out here, hang out with us. And so when I was in college, I booked a flight out to LA, and I visited a couple of these friends for the first time in person. I went up to this big house in the Hollywood Hills and met this guy Blake and Dylan and Ken and a bunch of other people who lived in this house. And it was actually Blake's birthday, so it was pretty fun, and I got to meet a lot of really cool people. I think like I didn't even know it at the time, but like I was having a full conversation with like David Dobrik and like a bunch of other big celebrities or like internet personalities, but at the time I didn't really know what that was. So that was pretty interesting and a cool kind of thing to look back on. So eventually, I flew back to college, and then like about a few weeks later, I had a call with my mom, and I was like, Mom, I like school, I like what I'm doing, but long term, I don't want to be doing the same thing forever. I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit and drive, and like I need to make that happen. So I need to move to LA and, work on these things. And she kind of told me right from the start, like, that's fine, but we're not going to support you. Like, we won't give you a penny. Um, so if you go homeless, you go homeless. And I kind of responded. I remember vividly, like I told her, I was like, that's okay. Like, I plan on being homeless. I actually plan on it happening several times, probably, because, like, the path of an entrepreneur is not always easy, and you don't always have handouts. So it was definitely something I think at the time I thought I knew what I was getting into, but it was a lot harder than I imagined. So I made the move. I moved out to LA, and the first thing I did, my mom actually was super nice and drove across the country with me to try and get me help set up. I didn't have an apartment or a place to live, so once we got to LA, we just got a hotel room for a few days. We actually got there on my mom's birthday, so that was pretty fun. And we scoured Facebook and Craigslist trying to find a cheap place to live that I could afford. I had I think $2,500 or something in my bank account at the time. So we stayed in this hotel room for a couple nights, and then I found this awful, god-awful co-living house. To give you some context, it was a normal house in North Hollywood or Van Nuys or something in the valley, and there was 20 people living in this one house together, all in the shared living. And it was 2 bedrooms and 2 living rooms and 1 kitchen, and it was set up kind of like a dorm. So there was bunk beds. So there was a male room and a female room, and there was 10 in each, and we kind of just shared the space. But I remember this one guy, I don't remember his name, but he was the bunk above me, and he was probably 40 or maybe 50 years old. I just remember wow, this is really crazy. I've never experienced something like this. There's a grown man that sleeps right above me. Anyways, it was I think $850 a month or something like that. And I tried to spend as little time as I could inside this house. So I'd wake up really, really early, try and leave the house, go drive somewhere, go walk somewhere, meet up with friends if I could. And then eventually, my friends that were living in this big house in Hollywood Hills just said dude, you can sleep here, stay here. It sounds awful. And so I actually ended up packing up my stuff in the middle of the night and leaving that awful co-living house. And so for a little while, I moved into this house, kind of unofficially, and I'd spend my days there. And one day, I was really bored sitting in this house. I think most people were gone, and I was just I need to do something. And so I was scrolling on Instagram, and I found this girl who I thought was, kind of attractive. And she, I think, had 500,000 or 600,000 followers on Instagram. And I was just what the heck? She's never going to see my DM or my message and whatever, but I'll just DM her anyways. And so I messaged her, and I was hey, I live in this cool house. Do you want to come by sometime and do a free photo shoot? Just kind of for fun. I was just kind of trying to meet people, network, and do something to keep me from boredom. And so she actually ended up responding that same day, an hour or 2 hours later. And I only had maybe 1,000 followers on Instagram, and I was what the heck? How did she see my message? Whatever. And so she ended up coming to the house, and brought her boyfriend, Mackenzie, and her mom and her little brother. And I was what the heck? Why did she bring this guy? I didn't know these people were coming. It ended up being a really, really memorable moment in my LA journey, because me and Mackenzie became best friends right from the get-go. He was an influencer as well. I think he had a similar following, maybe 600 or 800,000, something in that range at the time. And we just hit it off right away, best friends, we had known each other for a long time. And so eventually, we started hanging out every day. We'd make music together. He's a really talented singer and writer, and we play video games and just normal stuff. And he was kind of the reason I got introduced to the influencer world, I guess you could say. His manager was named Bobby at the time, and I was sleeping over at Mackenzie's house for like a week or two, and Bobby was kind of watching the house with us. And I was like, if you have any other like talent or influencers that you need photos for, or videos or whatever, hit me up. I'll do it. And he connected me with another influencer named Diego, and man, like same story. Like we just became friends right away. I love that kid. And as I just kind of started hanging out with like Mackenzie and Diego, I started to meet their friends, and a lot of them were other influencers and creators. And so, kind of unintentionally, I just got put into this, social media landscape, and I didn't really know anything about it at the time. And so it was a little tricky. Like, I remember after like a couple months living in LA, I had managers of other social media and celebrities DMing me and emailing me saying, hey, like, we want you to, shoot this or do a photo shoot for this person. And I was pretty excited about it. I was like, okay, cool. I'm getting some work. Like, let's try and pay my bills. And I found out like this industry, at the time was really not what I expected. Of course I said, sure, like I can do this shoot. I'll meet with these people and I'll do a great job. That's why you're, messaging me, obviously. But, to my surprise, like most of these managers were like, oh, like we want you to do 10 of these shoots for us, and the influencer will post it and tag you. And that was it. Like no payment. It was just the tagging on the posts. And I was like, what? Like, who are these people? Who do they think they are? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, why would I ever do that? And I actually remember I got mad at this one manager named Nick, and I was like, he wanted me to shoot like 12 of his talent. They all had like over 1 million followers, and I was like, do you think I care like how many followers these people have? I need to, pay my rent and eat. How am I supposed to do that if you're not paying me? And so it was an interesting learning moment, I think, for me, because, as an entrepreneur, like you have to know your value. You have to stand up for yourself. And there, comes a lot of people that'll try and use you or, manipulate you into thinking, you're getting something from them in exchange. And most of the time that's just not how it works out. Of course I did some shoots for people that were free because it's part of, growing as an entrepreneur, meeting new people and networking. And, it definitely opens doors for you in the beginning. But I think it's important to know your worth, and, don't let people use you just because you're new or, unexperienced in your field. So as I was hanging out in this house, I kept meeting new people and doing more photo shoots. I was doing some brand work. I wasn't really getting paid to work with the brands, but I thought it was cool, in the beginning to do free work and just kind of build up a portfolio for, other brands to see, so later I could get paid. And, I worked with a lot of different companies and celebrities and influencers and whoever. And so kind of like the first year, 2 years of living in LA, I just focused on networking and having fun because, that's what I thought it was all about. And, looking back, that was probably not the best use of my time or money. And, my mom and my dad were having to help me out, financially still, which was definitely kind of hurting our relationship, I think. Yeah, it probably just wasn't the smartest move on my part. But I don't regret anything. I think I did meet a lot of really cool people, and a lot of doors did open. A lot of them were not the best doors to be opened, but I ended up living in a couple content houses and working for a bunch of different content houses. And if you don't know what that is, it's like where a bunch of influencers live in one house or share a house, and every day they are supposed to wake up and film TikToks or videos or do brand work or make music. So I was kind of there to help them shoot their content, help them get brand deals, help them get paid. And I was supposed to get a cut, but I was really inexperienced and um, not used to any of this. Everything was new, so I was just kind of rolling with the punches. And I learned about contracts and vetting people and investors and all types of stuff. And I definitely lost a lot of money. I made a lot of friends, lost a lot of friends, and a lot of it was pretty traumatic. But looking back, like, I think it was a great experience because I learned a lot about people and a lot about business and relationships. And so I think like it was an important part of my journey. Most of these content houses no longer exist, but I was, shooting content for like Logan and Jake Paul at Team 10. I was shooting content for members of the Hype House, the Clout House. I was in some smaller content houses, one of them called Inspire, where I actually lived in the house. And it was really fun, like partying and hanging out and just living with people your age. And like, nobody's going to school. You're just like focusing on, what you love to do. And so that part of it was really fun. But you have to remember, like, these are all kids with almost no life experience, no work experience or business experience. And they're all just sitting in this house that, some investor's paying for, under the notion that, this investor's going to make their money back on brand deals and, whatever else is going to happen in this house. And so if you're not working, like, that relationship is on the line, and your bed and your roof over your head is on the line. I think like a lot of us didn't really put that into perspective or didn't think about that. And so, that house kind of fell apart eventually after about a year. And I think there was a lot of like broken relationships with the members of that house after, because it's a lot of stress, I think. Not knowing where you're going to live, not knowing, when your next meal is going to be. And, I don't say that to sound dramatic, but like literally, I had friends living in this house that were like, I need to go on TikTok live stream and get, some money from gifts from viewers before I can go like eat a McDonald's meal and have breakfast. And so like, we didn't really think anything of that. We were just like, yeah, this is how it is. This is normal. Like, we're on the grind. And, I think like from anyone else's perspective, that sounds absolutely ridiculous. And why would someone do that? But like I said, I don't regret any of it. So later on, after all these content houses went to shit, I really wanted to focus on getting my own place to live and not depend on, these houses that could fall apart at any moment. And so I got my own place, shared bedroom, in an apartment or a house. I kind of lived all over LA. I've lived in, all over the valley and all over the city, downtown, by the beach, kind of everywhere. And I guess I needed to figure out what I wanted to do, because I'm someone who's interested in a lot of things and I want to do a lot of things. But, the con to that kind of trait is sometimes it's hard to focus and follow through on one thing at a time. And so, I'd get somewhere, I'd start something, and then I'd be on to the next thing before I finished it. And, that's something I'm still learning. Like, I still kind of do that sometimes, and it's not the best. So I'm really working on trying to follow through, because it's important. So eventually, like, after moving around a while, I was living in a place that was pretty stable with my friend Justin in Koreatown. And, in the beginning of COVID, I had like bone spurs on my feet and like all these problems with my feet. And I actually had like 6 or 7 surgeries done on my feet. And I became kind of close friends with my surgeon. He just had like this really outgoing personality and was into social media. After spending all this time together, he was like, oh, it would be sweet. Like, I want my own reality show. Like, I want to do social media and blow up and blah, blah, blah. Like, help me. And I was like, I don't know. And, eventually he convinced me. And so I started working for him, filming surgeries actually in OR rooms and posting them on social media. And he ended up blowing up on TikTok and on Instagram, getting millions of views and so forth. And really helped his practice grow. And he was getting patients flying in from Florida and all around the country to come have surgeries with him or diagnose them or give them treatment options, which is really cool to see. And so, as that kind of happened, a lot of his friends in the medical industry, were like, he's blowing up, like I want to do that too, tell your friend to help me. And so I ended up taking on like a couple other surgeons and doing the same thing for them. And then I realized like I can't be doing all this, but like maybe this is something I could scale. And so I formed a company with my friend Justin called Medical Marketing Masters. And in the beginning of COVID, we brought on a bunch of different clients that were surgeons, and we hired our first employees and video editors and filmers. And we were sending people into OR rooms all across LA, filming surgeries, managing social media pages, and creating digital strategies for these surgeons that had no idea of how to use social media or how to leverage social media to grow their practices and make more money. That was a really interesting company. I learned a lot. I actually found it really interesting because I'd always been like fascinated with surgery and like weird kind of stuff like that, but I was never smart enough grade wise to get into medical school or become a doctor. And so really kind of fascinating to me that I could be standing in an OR room right next to the doctor, learning all this stuff firsthand, like without having to read a textbook. I kind of skipped the process. But even in that, like I learned a lot. I think one of the biggest mistakes we ever made was we posted a video and there was an x-ray machine in the back of the video that had the patient's name on it. It was like it was not even legible, but it was there. And like I remember like within 24 hours of posting it, our client called us and was like, we get a call from HIPAA this morning and got fined $1 million for breaking the patient protection laws. And I was like, my heart sank. I was like, fuck, like what are we gonna do? And luckily they kind of understood, like we're young, we're new to this, it was a bad mistake, but we didn't have to cover it, luckily. And they worked it out with HIPAA and we got the video down. But it was a really eye-opening moment for me where I was like, this is serious, like we need to take this seriously. And and so later we did training with our employees and contractors, so they knew exactly what to include in videos and not include in videos, and things they are able to touch or not touch while they're in OR rooms. And yeah, it's all just part of the learning process. And so now, I'm really interested in traveling the world. I've been all over the US and to a bunch of other different countries around the world. And I went solo traveling for the first time last year by myself. Man, like, I will never forget that. It was a really, really fun experience. I met a bunch of other kids and, young adults like myself, from countries all around the world. And we were singing and dancing on the beach and exploring waterfalls and, all types of stuff. And it was really, really fun. So I wanted to create something, for people like me who are interested in travel and solo travel because they don't really have friends that, can take off from work or don't have the money to travel, freely. And so I wanted to build this platform for people to connect and be able to plan group trips together, really make solo traveling accessible and fun, for young adults. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. But yeah, this is kind of like a brief introductory to, who I am and some of my interests. And so I'm really excited to bring on some fun guests in future episodes and dive deeper into entrepreneurship and strategy and all this. And so thank you for listening and watching this episode. And of course, remember to like and subscribe on this video so you don't miss out on future episodes.